Hey, welcome back to the Duke Cooper podcast. Today I'm talking to Dan Englander. Dan is the CEO and founder of Sales Schema, a fractional new business development team for marketing agencies and B2B service companies. He's the host of the Digital Agency Growth podcast and the author of Relationship Sales at Scale. And he's on a mission to help agencies and B2B service companies go from reactive mode to owning repeatable new business processes. Welcome to the Do Good Work podcast. Today, I'm talking to Dan Englander. Dan is the CEO and founder of Sales Schema, a fractional new business development team for marketing agencies and B2B service companies. He's also the host of the Digital Agency Growth podcast and the author of Relationship Sales at Scale. And he's on the mission to help agencies and B2B service companies go from reactive mode to owning repeatable new business processes. Dan, welcome to the pod.
Raul, thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
This is fun, man. I always like talking B2B, sales, lead gen, opportunity. There's one key question that I've always seen when it comes to the lead gen world. And now with the new evolvement of demand gen, which we'll get to, but you've heard this maybe 1,001 times. I've heard this. I forgot how many times, but hey, thanks for getting the leads, but the leads don't convert. The leads suck. The lead quality isn't there. I think that's a ethereal issue, but it's something we face day in and day out. I want to get your point of view on that.
Yeah, that's a hot button issue, and it's a big one. It reminds me of like in Glengarry Glen Ross. I won't say the word, but the leads don't suck, you suck sort of thing. It's never that. It's never that simple. The leads can indeed suck, but I think that it also there's a lot of onus on fine tuning your own process and using leads as an opportunity to move things forward. So let me make that a less hand wavy and more specific. I think that in the agency world, most people we work with and most people we talk to, you're probably used to this too, are accidental business owners, or even if they're not accidental business owners, they've gone from 0 to 1 on referrals and the strength of their offers. And you just have to understand that like not all business situations are created equal. And if you're interested in building something that can scale and something that can live beyond you as an owner, you have to be able to deal with leads that are not inbound referral leads, right? And basically building relationships with people before they have an active need, not during or after they have an active need. So it's a different sort of sales situation, but it's huge and there's massive opportunity in being able to do that. And I actually think that the agencies that thrive and continue to do well in this new environment are going to be the ones that figure out how to do that. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question, but
I think it's good.
Yeah.
No, I think it's good because it stems to the highlight was building the relationship before the need actually becomes a need. And I think that's something we overlook. I think a lot of the experience that I have is in direct response, right? So it's always middle, bottom of funnel, people who know they have a need, have a desire, either need to be solution or problem like aware, but we're talking to people who are ready to go. Versus here, it's a long-term nurture, which can feel slow, look slow, whatever we want to. It's not like a quick dopamine hit is what I'm trying to get at. Kind of want to talk more about though that as a strategy, because I know that planting the seeds early not only yields greater fruit and like crops in the future, but it also yields less stress in the future as well, as opposed to always being in reactive, got to get sales this month mode. Kind of want to talk about what are some of the tactics that work pretty well in building relationship prior to a need of being surfacing.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the way that we think about it is at the top of the funnel, if you look at the way most people do outreach, they're thinking about selling in the same way they sell at all points of the funnel. So by that, I mean, you see a lot of marketing copy and you see a lot of case studies and you see a lot of, hey, we're so awesome and we're better than everybody in these ways. That sort of approach is actually targeting the sort of person that's further down the funnel. So that's where you get lucky and you play this numbers game and you reach out to 1,000 people or whatever, 2 of them happen to be there right then and you do well. That's not really sustainable, right? For a lot of reasons, because your deliverability could get shot, because most people get annoyed, most people don't, and also just the opportunity cost. There's most people that would be willing to talk to you if you took a different tack. So by that, I'm not saying you're just doing networking meetings, but you're understanding that at the top of the funnel, actually the thing that is scarce and the resource that you're going for is trust, right? You're climbing this trust ladder. So there's different ways to build trust. We're not the only way. But the way that we found to do it really is by looking at the gold that's under your feet, the people that are you might not know, but are already likely to talk to you based on things you have in common with them or relationships. You can
Mm,
kind of think about this as like circles of influence. Like you have these orbits. You have your tight orbit, which is your family, close friends, coworkers, people you might invite to a big party, and outwards from there. So if you go furthest out to cold, you don't have any trust. But if you go out to people that would talk to you if they knew a certain thing about you, business and or personal, that's who we're going after. And then for us and our clients, it means that we're building out data on approximately a few hundred people per week and contacting them. And that's how you're able to achieve that level of scale. I could keep going further into the tactical rabbit hole and what that looks like, or let me know if
No,
I
so
don't want to
just
blabber too long
just to
about it.
recap and make sure
Yeah.
that I understand, it's more warm audience, so people who either know of you or know that you exist and maybe what you do. So then I do want to go more in the tactical, and I want to
Yeah.
focus on a case study and kind of share that with you. But you reach out to them as the goal to build like a networking call. Like what I personally do is like relationship building, like training or being part of their podcast or adding value to their community. Like, how can I help you look like a superstar? How can I help you? And that's the approach that I think works well, in my
Yeah.
opinion, leading with value and generosity. I'm curious to know what you suggest on your pipeline.
It's similar to that. Oftentimes we're leading with the commonality because I think the Cialdini like mental, the trigger that's being flipped is this person in my tribe, are they in my world? And tribe can have very negative connotations, but it can also have very positive ones, right? So
Mm,
if you are niche to bio and life sciences or e-commerce, that's great. That helps you a lot. That'll make a huge difference if your agency's properly niched or has certain specializations. But that only takes you so far. So
mm,
for us and some of the outreach we might do is we might actually look at commonalities between companies. Like let's say you've done tons of work for General Electric or something, and then you wanted to contact another blue chip tech company like HP. What if you were to find everybody that used to work at General Electric and has now gone on to HP, onto titles you want to reach, and then reference that in an email, right? So now,
mm.
now that's something that, yeah, it requires some work, it requires some data mining, but it's all imminently doable and it's going to get you a much higher level of trust and a much higher meeting rate than if you do something else. That's just one tactic. It doesn't work for
Mhm.
everybody. But another one that well, I'll give a little more background. For years, we had clients tell us, "Hey, we get all our business from referrals," and we would say, "That's not enough. You have to go on. You have to go beyond referrals and blah blah blah." That is true, but let's be honest, referrals are going to bring you in with more trust than anything else. They're the most ancient type of marketing that exists. It's the only thing
Mhm.
that's like, "Hey, I vouch for this person or this thing." The problem is most people are just happening into referrals in this reactive way, right? Either like they happen organically, which is great, or you meet somebody on a call and you're like, "Hey, do you know anyone?" And it's a lot of work for that person because then they have to like really know your offering and know you and do a lot of work
Gotta
and
be
so
worth it
on.
for them.
It has to be worth it for them. So the way that we think about referrals is like, look, all the data is like right at your fingertips for figuring out who you should be talking to get referred to the right places. The issue is most people don't put in the time and it's not done in a very systematic way. So one of our most common starting points is doing relationship mapping and doing a referral campaign, right? Which we have a whole proprietary process for. But even if you do this on your own from a high level, what it looks like is looking at everyone you're connected with, figuring out who they know within the accounts you want to reach, and then setting up calls with them. And a lot of people might be skittish about these calls and everything, but the way that we think about it is if you're really direct and open and honest about what you're doing, and you're also like you do, like you're offering to help as well, it tends to work quite well. Like just saying, I'm working on some business development initiatives. I saw you might know some people I'm hoping to reach. And then actually being able to reference those specific people and say, hey, like, would you be open to helping me out? Goes a lot further and can condense just years of networking into like a pretty short amount of time. Yeah.
I like that you're really direct and upfront with what you're doing. Because if you're just reaching out to talk, like, why are we talking? Like, there's always that
Yeah.
hidden open loop. Like, are you like stalking? Like, what's your goal?
Yeah.
Or like the famous Zig Ziglar quote would be like, "Are you a professional visitor? Like, what are you here for?" It's like,
Yeah.
no, I'm
I
here
love that.
for future business, but I also want to do this in a cool way.
Exactly. Yeah. I forgot about the Zig Ziglar nomenclature. That's so good. Professional visitor. Yeah.
What are you doing is always a key thing. Like, is this worth your time? Okay, so you're
Yeah.
reaching out, probably LinkedIn or email, and then from there you're building referral, like you're pretty much saying, hey, I'm working on some initiatives here. And they can respect that too, because every business needs this, but you're doing it in a way where you're seeing how you can help them. One of the interesting, we don't have to dive too much into this rabbit hole, but I kind of want to ask you,
Yeah.
like I get feedback from either people in the cohorts or people that I train or support or clients, and they ask, well, should we pay for referrals? How do you strike that kind of relationship and balance? And I don't think there's a wrong answer here, but I want to get your perspective and point of view on what you suggest.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it definitely can be situational. I think that what I found is with this sort of referral marketing, like or referral campaign, or this sort of approach, I should say, people are doing the referral because they want to help and they think it's worth doing. And you've asked them for their help, and they're thinking, most people are thinking long term about this stuff. So it's almost like that referral fee kind of becomes icing on the cake. Like nobody's going to
Mhm.
send their kids through college with that referral fee that's so random and haphazard. What I'd say is like, definitely, if it's something you're open to doing, definitely talk about it, but I wouldn't lead with it. We've all been on these networking calls with people that hard sell referral fee, and it's never what's inspiring people to help. There are exceptions. I think that if you have a situation where there's one party or like one company that's sending you referrals, or you have a potentially symbiotic relationship with the partner, then that's where it becomes more interesting, right? But
Mm.
I actually think that in that situation, you want to start with like, who can I help? Like, okay, we have this other need that our clients have. Who can benefit from that? Or who can we send referrals to, as opposed to the other way around? And that's where the referral fee starts to become more substantive, right? And starts to become
Yeah.
more of an incentive. So anyway, those are some meandering thoughts on it.
No, that's interesting. No, I appreciate that. The thing that I like about your approach right now is like it's middle of funnel. It's actually building real relationship, having real conversations. Where does your content, do you focus or suggest around content to still build relationship with people with so that when the need does arise, they know who to look for? And how do you go about that? I think the big buzzword is demand gen, which is essentially awareness marketing. How do you go about that? How do you suggest companies in the B2B space to focus on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the main thing we're focusing on is like getting that first date. That's like what we're really good at. So everything else is things we've observed our clients doing really well and things we've done well for ourselves. So I think there's not one way to do it. I think like we're doing now, having a podcast is great. It's just this like hub around which all these other spokes can arise.
Yeah.
I think one thing to do is just like making sure, this is getting tactical a little bit, but like having an automation so that everybody in your CRM is going on to a newsletter and going on to
Mhm.
everything else you're doing. And so that anything else you're doing content wise, that's going out to them. And honestly, like from a sales perspective, so from the person that's actually like leading this charge, whether it's an owner or a new business person, people get really fancy with automations and with like, if this, then that, follow up then. And you can do that once you have enough data. But just keeping it simple and having a filter that says, okay, here's everybody that I haven't contacted in the last 30 days, and then setting some time in your calendar, building a re-engagement campaign that can just be really simple and conversational and say something like, we talked 30, 60, 90 days ago, was curious, what decisions have you made when it came to XYZ? We have some new things we're working on that I was hoping to tell you about. Can we find some time to reconnect? That email or a version of that is what probably drives like 70, 80% of our business.
No.
Now, the leads can originate in different places, like, but that sort of process is what drives business for us and our clients most of the time, is like just having that system going at all times. So you're always waking those people back up again. So it's less about one tactic as it is just budgeting the time for doing that. And it's honestly not a whole lot of time, but you have to
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
And you're doing that, like, manually when you reach out to them, or you said it's an automation to reach out to the 30, 60, 90?
I think the best way to think of it is more like a batched process,
Okay.
so that it's not fully automated. Because I think that once you've had a conversation with somebody, the cost of getting automation wrong actually outweighs the benefit of having it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but a batched process is different. So what we do is we have our CRM, we have a filter, we have like 100 people, we throw them into a mail merge, and then we manually look at each person and make sure, is this copy right for this person that we talked to this long ago? And if it's not, then we take them out of the hopper. Maybe we contact them individually or whatever, and then keep going from there. So it's more like systemization. I can talk, and batching is a good way to think of it.
No, I like that. I like that. In your so being on the lead gen sales relationship front, there's a lot of positive and wins to that. But there's also a lot of difficulty, and sometimes it can feel like the seeds that you're planting may not be yielding, and it might take 60 days, 90 days, 180 days just to see something pop. Talk to us a little bit about like the mindset and what keeps you going for the essentially the discipline every day.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think honestly, the biggest thing is focusing on top of funnel so that you have enough discipline to not get let down by anything at bottom of funnel, right? Because bottom of funnel is where more work goes into the equation and so on. And I think that one way to think of it is like, and this is not me making this up, is like counting the no's as opposed to the yeses. Like you, once you start getting data, you're going to establish a close rate, and that's
Mhm.
going to be pretty reliable over the course of time. I think with outbound, this is not me making this up. I think industry standard for B2B is kind of like a 10% close rate, right? So if you have
Yeah.
10 meetings, you're closing one of them, and you could do better than that. If you're new to it, you might do a little worse at first, but you know that. So you're like, okay, I got to get 9 no's to get a yes. It's what's tough is that we're humans, right? And we're emotional. We're not like the Facebook algorithm that can deal with a bad click-through rate and then readjust soberly, right? So
Mhm.
I think some of it's just remembering that, and I have to remind myself that. And another part is like making sure there's enough going into the top of the funnel so that you have that discipline. Beyond that, in terms of sales cycles and dealing with longer sales cycles and all that stuff, there's not one smooth trick to like speed up the sales cycle, right? It's not
Yeah.
like let's say you're selling $500,000 websites or something. It's not like you can just wave a magic wand and have like a Fortune 500 company do that with you. But there are things to test, right? There's a lot of it is just like sales blocking and tackling, right? And like
Hmm.
it's not stuff that we've invented, but it's like being able to think about process, ask the hard questions. There's tons of great sales processes, Zig Ziglar, there's Sandler, but
Mhm.
being able to like figure out where does the pain actually live, and getting checking all the boxes before you move on steps. Because I think what's so painful for so many agencies out there, it's not getting no, it's investing hours and hours of time and then team time and then having people just fade away, right?
Yeah.
That's what hurts. So you can't always prevent that, but you can reduce the rate at which that happens by getting commitment sooner, right? And like understanding pain. And I think way too often agencies will get on a call and immediately start pitching and get excited about things.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah.
and that's the problem is you've got to look at sales best practices from perspective of what's worked across the gamut, right? Across the B2B sphere, and like lean into process, and really a lot of it's becoming a sales driven organization overall, right? So anyway, I've blabbered a lot, so let me pause there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think anytime I don't follow my own processes, like the sales cycle elongates, the question and answers, can we clarify this and that? Like if I just followed the thing I told myself I'd follow, it'd be much smoother. So I can attest to that through the pains of going through that. You mentioned a lot around, and I kind of want to like get your thoughts on this. This will be like your final thoughts on this because we did hit on a lot of this earlier, but filling in the top funnel, I think we all have ideas around what that looks like. But can you help demystify like what are some of the top 3 tactics you focus on to fill the top of funnel?
Yeah. I think the first one is looking at where the trust is already built, right? So looking at like where you can go to get potential referrals and to network, which is doesn't have to be a dirty word. Like if you do it the right way, it can be very directed. So I think that's often the best starting place is just working on that process. From there, in terms of top of funnel, like we're really big on outbound. That's what we do. And there's other tactics you can do. We have a
Mhm,
whole like course and training and stuff and a book about this that I'm happy to hard sell.
mhm,
But beyond all those different outbound tactics, I think the main thing is like you're balancing this idea of like commonality and scale, right? So
mhm,
being able to put time to it. That's the outbound side. On the inbound side, I think it's good to have like one big virtuous project to get top of funnel, right? So like for us, it's the podcast. For you, maybe it is too. Podcast is a great idea, but it's not for everyone. Some people just don't want to do that, or maybe your market, maybe you're niche down to a market that doesn't listen to podcasts. Maybe they're older school or whatever. But being able to like focus, I think, on one thing that you can make really good on the inbound side is
mhm.
better than trying to be everywhere, right? So
Oh, yeah.
that's probably old advice, but those are a couple
No,
things that
that
come to mind. Yeah.
That's the beauty about what works is that it's different principle, the same principles told different from different perspectives at different times from different experiences. And I think that's important for everyone to hear and understand. Like, how does this apply to me? How is Dan making it work? And what could I do? What could I take away from this? So I
Yeah.
think that's brilliant. The simple networking, doing the outbound and reaching out and creating relationships. And then from there, the key one master project. If you're going to do a podcast, if you're going to do a newsletter, if you're going to do a book, if you're going to do inbound, make it good because
Yeah.
the market will know.
Exactly. And I'll just add to that. I think a lot of it is mentality and how agencies think about sales. And what we see, and maybe I mentioned this earlier, maybe it was before we threw on the recorder, but a lot of the times people are thinking of sales as like a necessity or like a part-time hobby, something they do when they need to do business. And the
Mm,
problem with that is like if you wait till that long, it's going to be really hard to make that happen, right? Especially if you have a significant deal size and it's going to be stressful. But beyond that, it's going to be really tough to build to achieve your dreams, whether you want to like get acquired or you want to just grow or you want to just choose your clients instead of the other way around. So you have this division of duties with your fulfillment side, and you know that if you need a designer, you hire a designer. If you need a media person, you hire a media person. But the same goes for new business. So you're like, okay, Dan, but we're small and I can't afford a salesperson yet or whatever. Great. Then you've still got to have that consistency. And that
yep.
might mean you having dividing up your time a certain way and doing that no matter what, just like going to the gym or eating healthy or anything else. Yeah, you can stop going to the gym when you're healthy, but guess
Yeah.
what's going to happen? Yeah.
No good. There was a graph that I saw. I was telling my wife about this, that for men who lift, because I lift, like if you're lifting during a certain age, like at the age of 60 to 80, like bone loss does not deteriorate as much if you don't. At those ages,
Uh,
like catapults all the way down. So
yeah.
you're right, keeping that consistency over time. And I think that's key. I think for final thoughts here, I would love to know what are the key habits you recommend founders and agencies or B2B services focus on every day when in relation to sales? What are the key habits to focus on every day or every week?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of my early mentors, John Logar, put it really well, where it's like sell, teach, or learn. So like if you can sell every day at least once on like one qualified call, great. If you can't do that, then teach, find somebody you can help out. And if you can't do that, learn something, from somebody in your market. I think that helps a lot. That's definitely geared towards new business. Beyond that, I don't have this mastered myself. What I'm trying to get better at is also looking at talent and hiring and just thinking of that, with the same mentality as new business. So just like being able to talk to people we could potentially hire and just focus on that pipeline as well all the time. So those are a few habits. Another thing that helps me out a lot personally is I forgot who put it like this, but like cooks and chefs have a mise en place, right? And they like
Hmm.
set it up before the next day, before they have to go prep food items. So that helps me a lot where it's like sometimes work isn't just sitting down and doing the work, but it's like setting up that process. And for
Mhm.
me, that's like journaling and planning out at least from a high level, like the next day and what I'm going to be working on. Because if I know that if I just jump right into something, it's going to be scattered and I'm probably going to
Yeah.
do something that's like not worth doing. So those are
The
a few things
crux,
that come to mind. Yeah.
the crux of entrepreneurship. I love it. Dan,
Yeah.
for our listeners, what's the best place that people can go to? One, thank you for being on and learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, right. Well, this has been great and really appreciate it. And best place is just salesschema.com. Sales is in sales, schema is in schematic, two S's in the middle. And happy to nerd out with anybody there. My email is dan@saleschema.com.
Cool. Put those links in the show notes. Dan, thank you again.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you found value in today's podcast, please consider sharing this with someone that you believe could also benefit from this episode. You never know, you may be the catalyst that opens them up to a new way of operating their business and experiencing life. As always, it's an honor to be a small part of your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.